Hello and welcome to Pathways, where you are invited to join me for a visit with leaders in personal and cultural transformation. This is your host, Paul O'Brien. One of the central founding principles of the United States of America, and the thing our democracy is probably most famous for, is the separation of state and church. Our guest today would go beyond that historical fact to assert that the history of Western civilization shows that most social and moral progress has been brought about by persons free from religion. Our guest today and the nonprofit organization he runs, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, promotes the constitutional principle of separation of state and church and educates the public on matters relating to non-theism. The foundation is the nation's largest association of free thinkers. That means atheists, agnostics, and skeptics, with over 17,000 members. Since 1978, the foundation has acted on countless violations of the separation of church and state and has taken and won many significant complaints and important lawsuits to end state-church entanglements. Today on Pathways, we are visiting with Dan Barker, co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. A former minister and evangelist himself, Dan became a freethinker in 1983. His books, Just Pretend, a Freethought Book for Children, and Losing Faith in Faith, From Preacher to Atheist, are published by the Foundation. His newest book, Godless, How an Evangelical Preacher Became One of America's Leading Atheists, was published in 2008. A graduate of Azusa Pacific University with a degree in religion, Dan now puts his knowledge of Christianity to effective free thought use. A professional pianist and composer, he performs free thought concerts and is featured in the Foundation's musical cassettes. He joined the Foundation staff in 1987 and served as public relations director and was first elected co-president in November 2004. Hello, Dan, and welcome to the Pathways program.
Hi, Paul. Thank you.
First of all, how would you describe the mission of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, or the FFRF?
Two things, very simple. The first, as you said, is to keep state and church separate, and we do that through legal action, through lawsuits, through non-litigation like letters, and through educational legal efforts. The second thing we do is educate the public about the views, and I don't use the word beliefs, but the views of non-believers, which are atheists, agnostics, secular humanists. We're not specifically an atheist organization, although I think almost 90% of our group would call themselves atheist, either with a capital A or a lowercase a, and the rest call themselves agnostic or maybe deist. We have a few non-believing Jews, a few atheistic Buddhists, and so on, but we say we don't care what we call ourselves. We all disbelieve in the same God. So we publish books, we have a newspaper, we have a national radio show, we do public debates, we do speeches, we have materials that we put out just to let the world know that we atheists and agnostics and non-believers are here. We're part of the fabric of the country. We have a proud history in the world of contributions to society, and those two purposes have kept us going for 34 years now, and we're growing fast. Religion is becoming smaller, Christianity is shrinking, Judaism is shrinking. The fastest growing religion, if I can put that word in quotes, the fastest growing religion in the country right now is non-religion. Non-religion is 15, 16, and if you count in the people who didn't answer, it's like 20% of the country who are thoroughly secular.
Now, why do we need to be free from religion?
Well, Freedom from Religion, in the title of our group, really refers to the government. The government should be free from religion. Our government is secular. It should be religiously neutral, and there's some phrases of freedom from religion within Supreme Court decisions that talk about our government being a godless secular government. When religion and government mix together, they both get dirty. They both get, in the United States, we are proud to have a country where the First Amendment guarantees freedom of conscience. So as soon as the government picks a side, you have a loser or a winner. And so our founders wisely wanted to separate religion and government. So freedom from religion is good because it avoids the problems that come when politics and government push one religion and persecute another. But having said that, our membership is also composed of people who are personally free from religion. They see religion as not only untrue, which is the basic question you should have asked of any religion, is it true or not? But they also see it as irrational and even dangerous. Religious teachings, taking literally and taking to their extreme, have caused untold harm in the world. And for example, the case here in Wisconsin of a little 11-year-old girl who died on Easter Sunday morning because her parents did not take her to the doctor because the Bible specifically says the prayer of faith will heal the sick. She died as a result of that dangerous religious teaching. And of course our organization points out many examples of the dangers of taking religion too seriously, which is not to say that all religious people are bad. Most religious people are good people.
I remember the story of some war that was fought in the Middle Ages over which shoulder to touch first when performing the sign of the cross.
Oh.
So there's a great example. If you think about wars, we're certainly talking about a lot of harm that has come in the name of religion. You guys point out that most social and moral progress has been brought about by persons free from religion. That's a pretty tall claim. Can you point out some examples?
Yeah, well, the women's right to vote, for example, which was fought by the church, although there were liberal believers, especially people like Quakers and others, who were in favor of women's right to vote and women's suffrage and women's equality. It was the Bible thumpers, it was the church, it was the established religion that was fighting that basic democratic freedom. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was an out-and-out atheist, and many of her friends, like Ernestine Rose, a lot of the women in the early suffrage movement were either religious skeptics or out atheists and agnostics. Susan B. Anthony, who was an agnostic Unitarian, they fought for half a century to bring about that progress in the world. So today we can finally say there is a real representative democracy since women got the right to vote. That's one example. Birth control. Margaret Sanger, whose motto of her newsletter was no gods, no masters. Let each woman decide her own fate. Even Christians today who try to demonize Margaret Sanger are practicing birth control. That's progress. There's been a lot of progress made by people. Many of the early abolitionists were non-believers. Liberal believers and non-believers. Abolitionists who fought side by side together. In the civil rights movement, the same thing. So we could go, and when we're talking about progress, we could go after issue where non-religious people have been leaders or the leaders in those movements.
Now tell us about Freethought. This name of the building is the Freethought Hall, where your headquarters are in Madison, Wisconsin. What does Freethought mean?
Freethought, if you look in the dictionary, Freethought and freethinker as a single word, not free space thought. But that word has a proud historical usage going back to the early 1700s. Freethought and freethinker is like an umbrella term that encompasses anybody who uses only reason to come to conclusions. They reject established authority, they reject tradition, they reject orthodoxy, they reject faith, they reject revelation, and so on. Freethinker, it really is kind of a substitute word or synonym for rationalist. Freethinkers are individuals who intellectually and morally use only reason in coming to their conclusions mainly about religious issues. So the Freigemeinde in Germany came over to the United States and set up a bunch of Freethought halls where there were no sermons, there were just lectures and graduations and weddings and such, with the rejection of all dogma and all religion.
Now, at the same time, in life, we know that there are limits to reason. There are aspects of life and human experience that are simply not reasonable, or that we're not able to rationalize or to dissect with logic. What about things like intuition?
Yeah, well, those things are amenable to rational inquiry, where you can study them, you can do tests, you can look at populations and see what people say about those things and whether they work or not, and intuition or prayer or whatever you want to call it, or spirituality. But reason is not all of life. No freethinkers pretend that our entire life is run by reason. Reason only comes into play when you are trying to assess the truth of a statement. is the statement true or false? And when you have a statement or a proposition, reason is the only way that you can come to some kind of either a conclusion or a high likelihood of the truth of that. There are many things in life that don't call for reason. Freethinkers and atheists and agnostics are not like these Spock robots going around being super rational. We understand that there are feelings and emotions and love and beauty and aesthetics and feelings, and second guesses and maybe a confidence in something that we don't have full knowledge about. So we wouldn't call that faith. We wouldn't call that spirit. We would call that maybe a tentative hypothesis, which may be right or wrong. But religion says by faith something is true, where freethinkers will say faith is useless, because if faith is true, anything's true. So yeah, there's a whole lot of our lives that we don't need to subject to a critical, rational inquiry.